Thanks for joining me today here at Cedar Creek Homestead. And today's for our Porch Talk. And the subject I wanted to talk about just for a few minutes is about food security. And I know there's been a lot of concern and a lot of talk around the area here about food security. And several years ago, I'm going to say maybe 10, there started to be a move around here in our area, and it appears to be picking up around the nation and around the world, where people started wanting to grow more of their own food. And many called it a homestead movement. Some call themselves preppers, and my term more of a prepper is someone that just buys food at the store and stores it up. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's a good idea. If you're where you can't raise a garden, maybe your health, maybe your time, your job prevents you from, then being a prepper, putting stuff back. But a homesteader, to me, is really someone that tries to raise some of their own stuff and also preps it back at the same time, you know, by canning it, whatever. And then maybe what you don't have, you buy and store back like a prepper. Maybe that's just being kind of generic with the terms there, and maybe you consider yourself a homesteader and think I'm totally way off with what I'm saying. But we try to live off our land right here. Not to say that we don't need any help. We certainly need God's help, and we certainly need friends' help and people from time to time. And so I hope you can hear me today, because we've been thunderstorms, and we just had one come through here, and it was hailing earlier. And even the rain has been so hard at times you can't hear in this shop building here. It's got a metal roof. I do have it insulated, but even with the insulation on it, it gets pretty loud in here. But there's been a lot of concern lately, and I've heard that some of the seed places have had trouble keeping up with the demand. That, you know, maybe it's just hearsay, but some are saying that some of the websites have been overwhelmed and they've actually shut down and backing up and regrouping because they don't have enough seeds, or they don't have enough manpower to handle everything. And my wife loves to order from Baker Creek and MI Gardner, I think it's called, and a few of those. And we actually went down to Baker's Creek in Missouri. I went down. We're down in Oklahoma, so I guess that would be going up there. A year or two ago in the fall, we went on a trip, and we were going down this country highway, and we seen Baker Creek sign out by the road. And my wife said, hey, that's Baker's Creek there, the place I order seeds from. And I said, well, you want to turn around and go back? And she said, oh, that's okay. I said, well, you know, you really like that place. I always buy her their big seed catalog. They have a big one every year. They have a seed catalog, but they have a real big one. I always buy her one of those every year for Christmas the past few years. So anyway, I said, let's turn around, we'll go back. And we went back, and it was well worth the trip. They gave her a free little packet of seeds also, and she bought some seeds there. And so she is sure enough sold on Baker Creek now. But if you're ever in Missouri over there, look up Baker's Creek. It's kind of, to me, the way we went was off in the country, and you would think there'd be nothing there, but when you see their facilities and the way they're set up there, they have a conference thing every year there, I believe, and some go there that live in Missouri and around. So if you get a chance to ever go by there, when we went, there was nothing big going on, but they do have a restaurant, and they have a store open with seeds, and they have chickens and kind of a little homestead looking place set up there, and it's pretty interesting. So, but anyway, it's our understanding that some of them have had trouble supplying enough seeds. Our feed store, our co-op, I did a video yesterday about buying seeds, and so we've been buying. I bought our seeds for this year. I always buy from our co-op for the big gardening seeds, the big crops that we plant, and what I call the garden, the big garden out there. And so we raise about 80% of our food, and I would like to get us to where we're raising about 95% of our food right here on our place. And like I say, I would say we're probably doing about 80% and could easily do 90-95%. We've got all the equipment, seeds, we got the land, we got room, we got the well-being that we could do it. with God's help, but we just haven't. But we've been preparing now for several years. And I want to say something about being prepared. Probably 15 years ago when I first began to be concerned about being prepared. And I felt the Lord lay it on my heart, and the Lord also, I felt Him saying to get out of debt. I share this a lot with people, but I felt such a strong urgency. And I went to a business conference in Nashville, Tennessee, down there where the Gaylord Opryland Hotel is. If you know where that is, it's a really neat facility. But I went to a conference there, and while I was there, as part of the conference, they had this guy named Dave Ramsey gave a special deal. It was a freebie thing, and they said they had a surprise event going to happen. So they told us what it was, and if you wanted to go, you could go down to this certain room. And he gave us a free book also, an autographed book of his. And so we started preparing. Because I went to that conference, I already felt the Lord dealing with me very strongly. And then I go there and I find out about this Dave Ramsey and his teachings. And I felt the Lord tell me, get out of debt and do all you can to go back to the old ways, of like homesteading movements, what I call the old ways. And so I felt led to do that. And so I did start then, but it took me a while. So it's took me 15 years, me and Josie, to get to this point where we're at right now. So I'm just trying to tell you that it takes some time and it takes money. And you say, why does it take money? Well, if you're going to raise, let's just use, for example, I just watched a video of Doug and Stacy, and Doug made some raised beds. They're adding on some new raised beds. Very good video. Some of the stuff he showed might seem kind of simple to someone that's gardened a lot, but someone that hasn't ever gardened, it would be definitely very valuable information. But getting lumber and building your raised bed, going and buying, he had a truckload of compost hauled in, or topsoil, whatever you want to call it, brought in. All of that costs money. So every year they keep adding on to their place. He started out plowing with a horse and was going to have a big, just regular ground garden. Now they have decided that raised garden is better. One point he had about the raised garden, and it's very true, is with the dirt being raised up off the ground, the soil gets warmer, and so you get germination a little bit earlier. So if you're up north, that's a good thing. But anyhow, it costs money for the lumber. It costs money for the soil you're going to put in there. Now, if you have, let's say you're off somewhere and you have a little sawmill, your trees, and you can cut them up and make all your own lumber, you know, that's all good and well. But it takes a lot of time to do that, but it's still going to take some money. And if I had as much money and time as I have ideas I want to do here, man, I would have a facility here, but it takes a while. And one thing when you're building your homestead, think about this, is build stuff that's going to last. And I noticed on Doug's video, he was using cedar, and it was real 2x6 or 2x8 lumber, but it was cedar, like sawmill cut. You know, if you buy regular boards, they're not really 2x4, 2x6. This is my thought on that. He got cedar, which would normally cost you a little bit more money, but it's going to last a long time. So if you're planning on staying where you are, build stuff that's going to last. If you build you a chicken house, build something that's going to last, hopefully the rest of your life, and that's what you should plan on. And also build stuff that is easy to use, because as you get older, you want to be able to get out there and work the soil and the garden stuff even at an older age. So when I build things here, I'm thinking of what's easiest for me to work on, especially when it gets to be 100 degrees outside. What's going to be the easiest for me to work with? So, but also you got to buy up your tools and your equipment, and it takes a while. Buying garden hose, you know, to chop stuff with. Haas Tools sells some equipment. But all of that stuff costs money, and some of the stuff you can get at garage sales. auctions. Around here they'll have farm auctions of couples that they get old and die, or they have to go to a retirement home, and they'll sell all their stuff off. You can get canning jars, you can get all kinds of equipment and stuff there, and cheaper. You got to watch, because sometimes in the auctions they'll try to charge you more than it's worth, but you can get things to help your farm and help your homestead. But as you start developing stuff, and you might say, well, why would you need to go when we've got grocery stores, and we got Walmart, and we got Lowe's, we got all these places you can get everything you want, and we got Sam's Club and Costco's and all this. Why would you ever need to go to raising your own food? Well, look at what just now happened. There was a story through this virus where a lady went to the grocery store that I believe she had 5 children, and she said she broke down and cried at the grocery store. When she went to the meat aisle, there was no meat left. Toilet paper was sold out. There was some vegetables and things, and she managed to get some stuff to eat, but trying to feed 5 children when the store was practically sold out was a very straining time on her. And she didn't know about preparing. She'd never thought about it. All my life, I've been around old timers, I call them. A lot of them have died now and went on to be with the Lord. But I remember this being quoted a bunch. They would say that they believed that there was going to come a time when we were going to go back into the Depression era like they had been through as children. And they would say, you need to prepare and garden and put back stuff and build your stuff up so that you're prepared should this ever happen. If it never does happen, you ain't lost a thing. In their lifetimes, many of them had been through some very rough things. And so they knew that if you had food to eat, you had a roof up over your head, and you didn't own that roof, your house, and you had food and water and stuff to sustain you, that you could make it even if you lost your job. But if you were in debt over your up to your eyeballs in debt, then they knew that you'd have a tough time making it if you lost your job. And so they were prepared, because some of them had lost their jobs, and so they lived their life in a way that if they lost their job, the stock market crashed, everything come to a halt, they could still survive. And that's what we've been preparing for over the years. And because of our preparation, we have not stressed over this quarantine thing that's going on right now. If you have, I feel for you, because a lot of people are. A lot of people had next week's check already spent before they got paid this week. And some live check to check. I've been there and done that, let me tell you. I've lived from check to check and didn't know, had I got fired, we'd have been in trouble. If I didn't get my paycheck, I remember lining up at work to get a paycheck. At one company I worked at, they would pay on Fridays, but you could usually come and get your check on Thursday, but you couldn't deposit it till Friday. That was before they started doing this electronic deposit. But we'd all show up on Thursday morning at check time and be there. And I can remember a few times the checks didn't get there. They'd come by FedEx, and for some reason they wouldn't make it. And you could see anguish on some of the faces, and even mine, because I'm like, I've already got this week's paycheck spent. Now that's a bad habit to get into, and usually it's something that's breakable, that you can break that habit, but you got to want to do it. And it means hunkering down, tighten your budget up, and getting it fixed. But I knew that if we didn't get a check, we weren't going to have food to eat. We wouldn't be able to make it. Now, we had loved ones and family that put stuff back that in a bad situation we could have got help. But it would have been embarrassing to have to go ask for help. I'm kind of prideful in that area, and I don't want to ask for help. When we moved here, our house burned. One reason why we moved back here to Oklahoma. We lived in Missouri and Arkansas. And everywhere we went to, we rented the places. Our last place we had bought, and getting close to getting it paid off, very close, and it burnt down. And I'll tell you, most of our stuff was in there. One thing I do now is I don't have everything in one location. And thankfully there we didn't have everything in one location. We had a little shop with an office in it, and we had a couple of photo albums. I had a couple of my guns, 3 or 4 of them, out there in this shop. If not, I would have lost every one of my guns. Some of my guns are very old. We would have lost every picture. It would have been more devastating than it was. It was bad enough. All the clothes we had was what was left on our backs. But I had a little money in the bank, and we were able to run down to Walmart and buy enough stuff that night to make it. We rented a room. We had insurance, and thank the Lord for that. I believe God was looking out for us. There's a big story in behind that, but it worked out really good for our benefit that we had insurance and a good insurance agent that was looking out for us when we bought insurance. But nonetheless, really it was all God that was taking care of us. But we lost everything just like that. And the next morning was Sunday morning, and I was supposed to speak that morning, and I didn't because we was up all night, and by the time we got to church, I had told the pastor that night he'd come to our house there and stood outside with us while our house was burning and the fire department was trying to get it out. And he said, it's a very scary time, but he said, well, I understand. He said, don't worry about it in the morning. He said, maybe Sunday night. And I said, that'd be fine. So we went to church Sunday morning, and he got up and announced that our house had burnt, and they took us up an offering. And I want to say it was $2,000, $2,500. I'm sorry that I can't remember the exact amount, but to me it was a big offering. And I was so humble that I had never been on the receiving side of money. And I told our pastor, I said, listen, I don't need it because we've got insurance. The insurance people will be here this week, and they will work it out. We've already called them, and they told me they would be here, and they'd stuff that help us out. And I said, I got a little bit of money in the bank, but nothing would do them. And he told them just write the checks to Howie and Stacy, and so they did. And some people wrote checks that I thought was poor people that I didn't think could afford it themselves. But I know they sacrificed because they loved us and we loved them. And we still love them there at that church. We got friends there, and some of you may watch these videos and stuff. But anyway, the long story was we were prepared somewhat, but not totally. But people were so nice to us. But you get into situations that you can't control. And that's what's happening with the food security right now. The truckers, some aren't running because they can stay home and draw extra $600 a week on top of unemployment. Even if you are self-employed right now, they're going to give people $600 a week, is my understanding, if you aren't able to work. There's, some people are needing it. But I think there's probably a lot of people going to get it that really don't need it. They need to go to work. They can work. But some are just tired, and they're like, hey, we're just going to stay home with my family. My family's all home. I'm going to take what I can and do it. So things are shutting down. So that's putting a hurt in the supply chain because our food has to travel. The slaughterhouses now, some of them have people that are sick at the chicken processing, beef processing, pork processing. Some of them have actually had to shut down because they have sick people. Then they have freezer trucks sitting outside full of food that can't be delivered. So, being prepared where you have stuff, whether you're a prepper or a homestead, makes a lot of sense to be prepared. And food security, food to me is about the most important thing. You might think, well, having a nice car or a nice hairdo or all that kind of stuff is number one. But I tell you, having food to me, especially if you got children, but I like to eat myself. But right now we're not eating like kings, but we have ate good. We've not missed meals because we were prepared. But to get to this point took us a while to get prepared. So as far as food security, now is probably not the best time to get prepared, but it's time to learn from if you feel like there was a mistake you made, or maybe you've been preparing and you see that there is a weakness in your system. Maybe now's the time to evaluate. I've looked at ours and I was like, we were set up pretty good. We've been ridiculed. We've been made a little fun of before because of our lifestyle. You know, me and my wife, we stay home here and work a lot of times when other people are going and playing, vacationing and all kinds of other stuff. We're here preparing. And but I'm going to tell you, we enjoy this. We enjoy this as much as going and doing a vacation. So that's not no problem there. And we take money that we would spend on big trips. You know, you go on a vacation and spend $2,000 or $3,000. You can do a whole lot of work on your homestead. And we love to be right here. To me, vacationing is when I can stay home like on a Saturday and work all day long here. Or holidays, or sometimes during the winter months, I take Wednesdays off. And I love staying here on a Wednesday and working the homestead here. And I have projects. If you do a homestead, you've got more projects than you'll ever have time to finish. And I love having something to do. In fact, I hate going to gatherings like at Christmas and Thanksgiving where you have to be somewhere and stay all day, because I want to be busy. Excuse me, I'm like, I got my whole day off here, and what I like to do is, if it's somewhere around here, go eat and spend a couple of hours and then come back and get busy with projects. And so I try to stay busy with that kind of stuff, and it's what I enjoy, it's what I love. And so you know, it ain't like work to me. My son, he gets after me and says, Dad, this building fence or garden and all this isn't fun. And I say, son, it is fun to me. I really enjoy it. So besides being something that's really good for you, food security, having a way to raise a lot of your own food and being kind of self-sufficient is very vital, but it's also good for your health. It's good exercise. I get a lot of exercise around here. And there's times when I'm off, like a Saturday, I'll work around this place all day, come in the evening, and so I'm sit down and take a break. And after I set a little bit, I'm like, boy, I have really had a workout today. And people cry because the gyms are closed. Have you seen people getting upset because the gyms are closed right now? I can't believe someone would cry because they can't go to the gym. But that's the kind of, I want to say, dummies that we have. I'm like, get busy. You don't need a gym if you're homesteading. That's just, I'm crazy. But having food security is so important. Another thing about food security is you can't really depend or predict what other people are going to do. You would think right now, because we've been advised to stay quarantined. Now here in our state, the governor has issued stay safe at home, they call it. So they don't want you being in groups bigger than 10. It doesn't end till the end of April. They don't want you going anywhere unnecessary. If you're over the age, I believe it is, of 60, there's an age in there that they really want you to stay home. They don't want people visiting hospitals and nursing homes and places like that right now. And so there's a lot of things going on that they're doing here. But the big cities like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, they have orders from their mayors that they'll actually fine you. If you have church in a building, they can fine you for it. Now, if you're outside, some churches are meeting outside and they'll preach like from the church steps, and people just park in their cars and stay, out there, and they just listen with the loudspeaker and stuff. They're allowing that. But like meeting in a church or meeting a bunch of people in a building, they're really really getting strict on that. They said a bar opened up in Tulsa, I believe it was, and the police went there and fined them and told them they couldn't meet again. And if they did, if they opened back up after they fined them and told them not to, the next time would be jail. So that's a pretty serious deal. Now, I know some think all this just a big made-up thing here, this virus thing that's going on. But let me tell you, we've had people right here locally that have died of it. So we're a small town, very small. We've had a couple of deaths in our town. We've had other deaths, though. We've had a bunch of deaths lately that weren't even related to that. We've had 2 that have been killed in car crashes. One young man, a very good young man here, was driving his car, coming back from guard duty. He's in the National Guard. He was coming back at night. A man that was drunk was on a horse. The horse threw him off. The horse ran out at nighttime in front of this young man. The young man hit it with his car and it killed him. This young man was a very good kid, and I mean worked hard, and it's just sad to see life wasted. But he didn't have anything to worry about the virus, but he got killed that way. We had another lady up here just up the road. We know the family very well. I've known her all my life. And something happened. She went over into the other lane and hit a pickup head on. We don't know what was going on. You can guess all kinds of a million things that happened. But the driver of the truck is in critical condition. They had to life flight him out. But she was killed on impact. There was a passenger in the truck with the driver there, and the passenger's okay. But this lady that we know, she was by herself in her car, and it just took her just like that. So we've had people go, more people die of other things than we have the virus. So death is among us also. So trying to stay safe in these times. But you can't always depend on other people. And I was going to mention this little story about my mom. I hope she isn't watching, my biological mom, because she'd probably get mad that I'm sharing this, but none of you know who she is. But they're all scared to death, her and her husband. You know, older people are supposed to stay at home, and they're telling them to stay at home and be careful and all this. So, but if she has to get out, her and her husband wears these masks and gloves and everything, has hand sanitizers in their pockets and all this. Well, she called today, by the way, and I was glad to hear from her. But she said they had went to Lowe's to buy a power washer. And their house on the north side's gotten green on it, so they are just worried sick about the green on the north side of their house. So I've got a power washer here, and I had told them that they could borrow that power washer if they wanted. They just wash that off once a year. Well, I think she didn't want to come here because she's worried about the virus. Well, we ain't got the virus, as far as we know, but yet she was willing to go, her and her husband, to Lowe's. That doesn't make any sense to me. But she said they went to Lowe's in Muskogee, and they put on their gloves, and they put on their masks, had their hand sanitizer in their pockets, and they go in there, and they were shocked at how many people were not even wearing masks or anything, and said there was just gobs of people there, shoulder to shoulder, talking and everything. And I was like, first off, she might gripe about all those people being there, but my mama had no business going to Lowe's for a power washer to wash off green algae off the north side of her home. Nobody cares about the algae on the north side of her home. And I'll tell you, when this is over, then you can go get you a power wash. But I just say, folks, you can't really trust what other people are going to do, because some people just really don't think about it. And my mom is a wise person. She's a smart person, and she's college educated and everything. But I just sometimes some of the stuff folks do, and parents sometimes, I tell you, are almost like raising children with their ideas. But, you know, I didn't scold her. I didn't say nothing. But just in the back of my mind, I'm like, Mom, of all times to need a power washer. In fact, the weather's so nasty they can't use it anyway. It's been raining and everything. If you just go out there and spray it down with some kind of spray, they've got spray to take that off. This heavy rain we had today would have washed it off without a power washer. But anyway, you never know how other people are going to react. So in this time of food scarcity, a lot of people went to the stores and started panicking and buying food big time. Just going crazy, buying. Our local grocery store here has been sold out. It's not that there's not enough meat, but they've been sold out of meat. They've been sold out of toilet paper. Other things they've been sold out of. Hand sanitizer. They normally wouldn't be sold out, but one of the problems is their freezers will only hold so much. So they get a whole load in every week of milk and bread and all the stuff. They fill everything up, but in a matter of hours, everything's sold out again. And they said another problem they're having is people are coming from other cities, from the bigger cities around here, and they know when our store gets its supplies, and they're coming and hitting the shelves there, which is hurting us. So you can't really predict who would ever think that someone would drive from Tulsa, Oklahoma, hour drive to come to our grocery store to get food. I never thought of that. And now they're coming down here getting it. And to me, in some ways, they're kind of robbing from our local people. We have a lot of retirees here, and a lot of them that don't garden or do anything. Now, I have to say, a lot of our retirees here could garden. A lot of them have yards and homes and facilities set up that they could do a lot, but they've gotten used to this life of ease and they don't garden. And so if they did garden, they'd be a whole lot better off. I think it'd be healthy for them. Down here at our nursing home, they do something kind of neat, and I don't know if they're doing it this year because of the virus, but they have a little area in between at the back of the building that they allow the residents there to grow stuff, to grow tomatoes, whatever they want to grow back there. They can get them, they claim a little area, and some of them do it as a group. Several of the tenants there will work together, but I think that's very neat. But a lot of them are elderly, and they grew up raising their own stuff, so they're like, most of the people in the nursing homes are elderly. There are some that aren't because they have other issues, but most are on up in years, and they were raised up in hard times, so they like going out and having their own tomatoes and things like that, and I think that's really neat. But a lot of our elderly here would be better suited if they'd get back to gardening and raising some of their own food. But I've had them tell me that I've had some say, I never heard anybody say we would ever get bad again. And I was like, what? And you're an older person and you've never heard that? I've heard it a bunch in my lifetime. And also, I've had some of the older ones say that they aren't worried. They'll just go to the store. Not just older ones, younger ones too. All the store will always have. And then, look what we have now. And we've even had some come to us wanting things. And we can't supply everybody. We're not a warehouse here. But I'll tell you, we do help with what we can. But one thing, if somebody comes needing things, I make sure and tell them, you ought to get prepared. And I actually believe things are going to get worse. Not at this virus. I think we're going to get through this. I know some think this is just a big underhanded scheme. I do think some people have stirred it and driven it worse than it really is for political gain. I think that's happening. It's sad that they're doing that, but I think some are trying to destroy the economy so they can have political control. I can't believe someone would want to ruin someone else's livelihood. We have a lot of retirees here that are dependent upon 401ks and pension plans and stuff. And if those go down, it's going to hurt them getting raises or be able to take money out of their account. I've heard some say that their 401 portfolios have just been decimated. Now, if they leave it alone and the stock comes back, they'll be just fine. But if they sell out right now, they'll be hurting. So, but because of people want to stir things sometimes worse than they really are, it causes panic among people. So people go buy out the stores, they buy out the food and stuff. But food, water, raiment, and a shelter over you is the most important things. And you might say, well, I don't have much. I tell you, as long as you got a roof over your head. I'm not concerned about here so much what other people think about where I live at. It's really none of their business. What I live in and the way my place looks is nobody else's business but mine and my wife's. The Lord's blessed us with a place to live, and I'm happy to be here. We live in a double-wide trailer. And I'm going to tell you, this is one of the best homes I've had. I've had sure enough stick-built homes that was not built as good as this. And I am proud of it. I'm thankful for it. It's paid for. I don't owe a dime on it. That's another thing I like. But having a place to live in, where when things get bad like right now, if I lost I have my own business, but if I lost my business, I couldn't work at all, I don't owe for much. Don't owe for hardly anything. I had to come up with money, for utilities and stuff like that, and that would be kind of rough. But I'm telling you, if it got real tight, on utilities and stuff, we would start turning the stuff off during the day. We would do everything we could to save more and more and more on electricity. I've switched out, not just recently, but over the years, I switched out to more economic light bulbs, more energy efficient appliances. Everything we can do to save a little money, if it's going to pay for itself, it's a good idea. But I can't do it all just like that. It takes time. So in having food security or homesteading, in all of this area, it takes time to get going. So what I would say right now, if you aren't doing it and you're watching this video, and you haven't been prepared and you're thinking about preparing, start working right now. Don't panic, but start making preparations now for whatever comes in the future. The last 3 years we've had severe stuff. Or actually the last 4. We had drought. The next year we had severe floods. The next year we had we had tornadoes all through all this. Last year we had severe flooding. And this year we are having this pandemic that's nationwide. And so the last 4 or 5 years we've had stuff happening, and things that most around here would say they never ever thought would happen is happening right now. So if you're prepared and work on being prepared, and like I say, it takes time, but if you'll start today, you'll be ready. And the food security, I would say, of all things, is one of the most important things. I'm going to share one more little story. I have a missionary friend that went to Africa, and Malawi, Africa, and he was telling me about how the food is over there. And those people are starving, and they may be better now. This has been a few years ago, but they didn't have anything. And he said you had to, watch your food. They would get food in on containers and things to feed themselves, and you had to really watch your food supplies. You couldn't just waste food and things, because there wasn't like a Walmart or somewhere you could just run to and get. And you could buy meat along the road. They would have a beef carcass hanging up, and it would be covered with flies, just solid black with flies. But you could buy, that's how you bought your meat. And he didn't. He was able to have meat shipped in, but sometimes by the time the stuff got there, it was starting to get old. So, but we take it for granted here. And if you have some food security on hand, just in case something like this ever happens again, you'll be prepared. I've gone kind of long today with today's Porch Talk, but I do appreciate you watching. I hope this is helping you, and I certainly don't want to be a doom and gloomist about all this stuff, because we're getting around the corner here. I think things are going to be better. I really feel it, that things are going to be a whole lot better here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to see things let up and get better. We're just going along just fine, and I know a lot of you are. I've heard from a lot of folks that say, hey, they're just doing fine, but it was because they were prepared. And so if you'll get prepared for the next storm, start working now. Start getting ready and making ideas and plans. Maybe write you down some notes. Sure will help you. Hey, God bless you. If you're not a subscriber, would you please subscribe? We don't ask for your money, but every subscription helps us a bunch, and it helps the growth of our channel. Also, give us a thumbs up and comment down in the comments section. If you were prepared or not prepared, make a little comment down in the comments and let us know how things are going in your neck of the woods. Hey, we appreciate you watching today. God bless you. We're gone.